Welcome to Trending Tidbits, the show where we break down fascinating topics you know and love into those brain-boosting bites. Today, we're diving into the hidden power of your brain with Nicole Vignola's Rewire. Have you read Rewire?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a really fascinating exploration of how we can shape our thoughts and habits and behaviors, regardless of our past programming.
I love that you bring up programming because Vignola starts Rewire with this really vivid anecdote. She's a neuroscience student holding a human brain
Wow.
for the first time. And she's struck by this realization that she's holding like a lifetime of experiences, right?
Mhm.
And this leads her to question, like how much of who we are is sort of like predetermined versus what we can actually change.
It's that age-old nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah.
And Rewire really digs into that. It suggests that neuroplasticity plays a crucial role here. The brain's ability to change throughout our lives means that we have the power to kind of unbecome negative patterns and create
Yes.
positive change, almost by design.
I love that idea of unbecoming. It really highlights that we're not stuck with the wiring we're born with, right?
Exactly.
Viola has this really catchy phrase, neurons that fire together wire together. What exactly does that mean in terms of rewiring our brains?
Okay, so think of it this way. Each time you think or do something, specific neural pathways in your brain are activated.
Okay.
The more you repeat that thought or action, the stronger those pathways become.
So it's like, what's a good analogy? Like turning a footpath into a well-paved highway.
Yeah, a well-paved highway.
The more you walk it, the easier it is to get down that road.
Exactly.
So if I'm constantly thinking I'm not good enough, that becomes a superhighway in my brain.
Unfortunately, yes. But the good news is that we can weaken those unwanted pathways
Okay.
by interrupting them and consciously practicing new positive thoughts and behaviors.
So it's not like we're stuck in these negative thought loops forever.
Right, we can rewire.
We can rewire.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes me feel a bit better. Vignola, she gives this really relatable example, right? She accidentally overfilled her coffee frother,
Oh, yeah.
even though she knew better. Like,
Yeah.
she's a neuroscientist. She knows how much water goes in that frother. But her brain's ingrained habit took over.
Right.
And it just highlights how strong these pathways can be. They can lead to these automatic actions.
Yeah. We've all experienced those moments
Oh, God.
where your brain seems to be on autopilot even when you know you should be doing something differently.
Oh, totally.
This kind of brings us to the impact of stress and anxiety on the brain.
It seems like everyone is dealing with stress these days.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt so overwhelmed you just couldn't cope?
Absolutely. I think we all have at some point. Vignola points out that while stress can be like a healthy response to challenges, chronic stress, that can lead to some negative brain changes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And she emphasizes the importance of understanding the difference between stress, which is that external pressure,
Yeah.
and anxiety, which arises from those internal worries.
Okay. So how do we deal with those overwhelming feelings? Does Vignola offer any practical tips for calming down when you're feeling stressed out?
Yeah, she provides a toolbox of strategies,
Okay.
including a breathing technique. She calls it the physiological sigh, which can quickly regulate the nervous system.
Interesting. So like a quick reset button for your brain.
Exactly. It helps to calm you down.
What's interesting is Vignola herself went through a period of extreme stress, and she calls it emotional dysregulation
Right.
in her 20s. Can you explain what she means by that?
Yeah, emotional dysregulation just refers to difficulty managing emotions effectively. So in Vignola's case, it involved unhealthy coping mechanisms
Got it.
and just feeling constantly overwhelmed, which only made her stress worse.
It's reassuring to hear that even neuroscientists, right,
Yeah,
struggle with these things.
they do.
It makes these concepts feel more relatable and less intimidating.
Definitely. Vignola's personal experiences make Rewire feel more like a conversation with a friend
Right.
than a, dry scientific textbook. She also highlights the impact of our experiences on brain chemistry, using post-Olympic depression in athletes as an example.
Post-Olympic depression.
Yeah. Even positive experiences, like competing in the Olympics,
Right.
can lead to emotional come-downs because of shifts in neurochemicals.
That's fascinating. So even when things are going well, our brain chemistry can still be thrown off balance.
Exactly.
This kind of leads us to another key concept from Rewire, the negativity bias.
Yeah, the negativity bias. This refers to our brain's tendency to focus on negative events, more strongly than positive
So
ones.
it's like our brains are Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. I
Exactly.
can definitely relate to that. It's so easy to get hung up on one piece of criticism, even when you receive tons of praise.
That's the negativity bias at work. And Vignola explains that this bias can sabotage our efforts to rewire our thinking. It kind of keeps us trapped in those negative thought loops. But by becoming aware of this tendency, we can start to consciously challenge those negative thoughts
Okay.
and look for the positive instead.
So it's about retraining our brains to focus on the good stuff. Speaking of shifting perspectives, Vignola describes this fascinating experiment called the famous milkshake experiment. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in this study, two groups are given the same milkshake,
Okay.
but they're told different stories about its calorie content. So one group believes they're having an indulgent, high-calorie treat, while the other is told that it's a sensible, low-calorie option.
Right, so the milkshakes were identical.
Yes, completely identical. But the group who believed they were drinking the indulgent milkshake felt fuller and less hungry afterward.
Wow, that's incredible. So their beliefs actually changed their physical experience.
Exactly. It highlights the power of our thoughts and beliefs in shaping our reality.
That's wild. Okay, this power of belief, especially when it comes to those negative thoughts, ties into another concept that Vignola introduces. Creeping normality.
Creeping normality.
Yes.
What
It sounds a bit ominous. What exactly does that mean?
It's the idea that negative changes can happen so gradually that we don't even notice them until they've, significantly impacted our lives. Like the proverbial frog in boiling water, the temperature rises so slowly that the frog doesn't realize the danger until it's too late.
That's a powerful analogy. So how does this creeping normality play out in our lives?
So Vignola connects it to microtraumas.
Microtrauma.
Yeah, those small, seemingly insignificant negative experiences that just kind of accumulate over time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not necessarily one major traumatic event, but it's that constant drip, drip, drip of negativity
Got it.
that erodes our self-worth and our well-being.
Can you give some specific examples of these microtraumas?
Sure. So she gives examples like consistent criticism, subtle put-downs, or even emotional abuse that doesn't reach a crisis point, but slowly chips away at your confidence over time.
That's heartbreaking. It's so important to be aware of these patterns and to take steps to protect ourselves from these seemingly small but impactful negative experiences.
Absolutely. And that's where Vignola's neuro toolkit comes in.
Okay,
She provides a range of strategies for rewiring these negative patterns
got it.
and creating lasting positive change.
This is what I've been waiting for. Let's dive into those strategies and see how we can put this knowledge into action.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so, we talked about how our brains are kind of wired for negativity bias and how even small negative experiences can accumulate over time. But the good news is Vignola provides us with, this toolkit to combat this. It's not about erasing the negative completely, but, it's about intentionally shifting our focus and strengthening those positive pathways.
Okay, I'm ready to rewire. What's like the first tool in Vignola's arsenal?
Visualization.
Visualization.
Right. Yeah, visualization is actually a really powerful technique for rewiring. It's not just some whimsical concept, there's actual science behind it. So, by vividly imagining ourselves achieving a goal or overcoming a fear, we're essentially strengthening those neural pathways in our brains.
So like a mental rehearsal for success.
Exactly, a mental rehearsal. Vignola uses the example of Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, who famously used visualization extensively in his training. So he would mentally rehearse every aspect of his races, including visualizing potential obstacles and how he would overcome them.
That's incredible. So he was training his mind as much as his body.
Mm,
Does Vignola suggest we all become like Olympic level visualizers?
not necessarily, but the principle applies to everyone. So even small acts of visualization, like picturing yourself, successfully navigating a stressful situation, can help strengthen those pathways and make it more likely that you'll actually achieve that desired outcome.
So the more we visualize success, the more our brains believe it's possible.
Hmm.
What about the role of repetition? We touched on it earlier, but how does it fit into this bigger picture of rewiring?
Repetition is key.
Okay.
It's key to solidifying those new pathways we're creating through, visualization and other techniques. Remember, neurons that fire together wire together. So the more we repeat a thought or action, the more ingrained it becomes.
So consistency is key.
Yeah.
But what about those times when motivation wanes? Life gets busy, and it's so easy to fall back into old patterns.
Right. So Vignola addresses this with a really powerful concept called non-negotiables. And these are your essential habits, the things you commit to doing no matter what, even when your motivation is low.
Non-negotiables.
Okay.
It sounds like a great way to create structure and stay on track. Does Vignola provide any, like, examples of her own non-negotiables?
Yeah, she does. Some of hers include daily exercise, even if it's just a short walk, switching off her phone at a set time each night, getting 8 hours of sleep, meditating daily, and limiting social media use.
Those are great examples. It's interesting how they all seem kind of interconnected, like they create this, like, supportive ecosystem for well-being.
Exactly. Non-negotiables are not just about, checking items off a list. They're about creating a holistic lifestyle
Yeah.
that supports your overall rewiring journey.
I think I need to work on my own non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Getting enough sleep is definitely a big one for me, and exercise is important. But I've been slacking off lately.
We all have areas where we can improve. The key is to identify what truly matters for your well-being and then commit to those things consistently, even in small ways.
Okay. Vignola also talks about pushing through boundaries, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes those non-negotiables, especially like new ones, can feel really challenging.
Absolutely. So our brains are wired to resist change,
Okay.
even when it's for the better. So change often feels uncomfortable, uncertain, and our brains tend to prefer the familiar even if it's not serving us well.
So how do we break free from that resistance and actually like push through those boundaries? It's easy to say, face your fears, but much harder to actually do it.
So one strategy Vignola suggests is the what she calls the little by little approach.
Little by little.
Yeah, and it's about taking small incremental steps outside your comfort zone, basically proving to your brain that you're safe and you're capable.
So like dipping your toe in the water before jumping in head first.
Exactly. She shares this really heartwarming anecdote about her rescue puppy, Max, who's very fearful, especially around new people. But instead of avoiding those situations, Vignola gradually exposes Max to them in a controlled and supportive way.
So she's slowly desensitizing Max to those triggers.
Mhm.
What a patient approach.
It is. And it highlights the fact that, we can apply the same principle to our own lives, even if our fears are different. It's about recognizing that discomfort is a natural part of growth. And by embracing those challenges, we can rewire our brains to be more resilient, more adaptable.
Okay, so we've got our non-negotiables. We're pushing through boundaries little by little. But what about when we inevitably mess up,
Yeah.
We're all human. Setbacks are bound to happen.
You're absolutely right. And Vignola is very honest about this.
Okay.
She emphasizes that setbacks are a normal part of the process, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up when they happen.
Oh, that's such a relief to hear.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get so caught up in the idea of like perfection that we give up entirely when we slip up.
I understand. It's important to remember that progress is not linear.
Okay.
Vignola makes this really interesting analogy. She compares the brain to plastic, not elastic.
Plastic, not elastic. Okay. I'm intrigued. How does that apply to setbacks?
So, think about it this way. Elastic stretches and then snaps back to its original shape.
Right.
But plastic, once molded, it retains that new form. So even when we experience setbacks, the progress we've made doesn't just vanish. Our brains are constantly learning, adapting, even when we're not consciously aware of it.
So even if I have like a bad day or I fall back into an old habit, it doesn't mean I've undone all my hard work.
Exactly. Vignola encourages us to have compassion for ourselves during those times.
Okay.
We're all works in progress. The key is to acknowledge the setback, learn from it, and get back on track without, dwelling on the misstep.
That's a much more empowering way to approach setbacks. It's about progress, not perfection.
Precisely. And speaking of progress, Vignola highlights the importance of building self-trust and confidence as a key aspect of rewiring.
That makes sense. When you trust yourself, you're more likely to believe in your ability to change and make those positive choices.
Exactly. And she outlines 3 key steps for building self-trust: honoring commitments, setting realistic goals, and listening to your intuition.
Okay. Well, we've already discussed honoring commitments. So what about setting realistic goals? How does that build self-trust?
So it's about making sure your goals align with your values and your capabilities. It's finding that sweet spot between challenging yourself and setting yourself up for success.
So no more setting those unattainable goals that just set us up for disappointment.
Right. It's about being kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
And choosing goals that genuinely inspire and motivate us.
Okay. And what about listening to your intuition? How does that tie into building self-trust?
So, Vignola argues that our intuition is often a reflection of our subconscious mind, right? Which
Yeah.
has access to like this vast amount of information that our conscious mind may not be aware of.
So it's like tapping into our inner wisdom.
Exactly. By learning to trust those gut feelings, those subtle nudges from our subconscious, we're honoring our own inner knowing. And this in turn builds self-trust over time.
This is fascinating. Sometimes, though, it's hard to distinguish between, like, intuition and fear.
Hmm.
How do you know if you're following your gut or letting, like, anxiety take over?
That's a great question. And Vignola acknowledges that it can be tricky.
Yeah.
She encourages us to pay attention to how those feelings manifest in our body. So does it feel like expansive and exciting, or does it feel constricting and fear-based?
So it's about tuning into those subtle physical cues.
Precisely. And as you practice listening to your intuition, you'll become more adept at recognizing the difference
Mhm.
between, genuine inner guidance and those fear-driven impulses.
Okay. So we're honoring commitments, setting realistic goals, listening to our intuition. Are there any other, like, tips for strengthening that self-trust muscle?
Yes. So Vignola also emphasizes the importance of celebrating your accomplishments, no matter how small they may seem.
That's such a good point. We also get so focused on striving for, like, the next big thing
Yeah.
that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
Exactly. Those small wins are important. They fuel our motivation and they keep us moving forward. So every step in the right direction, no matter how small, it's a victory worth celebrating.
Okay. This has been so insightful. We've covered visualization, repetition, non-negotiables, pushing through boundaries, being kind to ourselves, building self-trust. Is there anything else in Vignola's toolkit that we haven't touched upon?
Yes. There's one more concept she explores that's especially relevant in our modern world: managing distractions.
Oh, distractions. They're everywhere these days. With constant notifications and information overload, it feels like our brains are being pulled in like a million different directions.
Exactly. And Vignola highlights how these constant distractions can sabotage our rewiring efforts.
Okay.
So they keep us in this state of like mental fragmentation
Yeah.
and prevent us from, focusing on the things that truly matter.
It's like our attention spans are shrinking by the minute.
I know. And she specifically points to the addictive nature of social media and how those instant gratification dopamine hits, they can actually rewire our brains to crave more and more stimulation.
Interesting.
And this makes it harder to focus on tasks that require like sustained attention and effort.
So those quick bursts of dopamine are training our brains for instant gratification rather than like long-term fulfillment.
That's the danger. So she compares it to training a muscle. The more we train our brains for instant gratification, the weaker our ability to delay gratification becomes.
That's a scary thought. So how do we break free from this like distraction addiction and retrain our brains for like focus and deep work?
So Vignola offers several practical strategies. One of the most important is creating dedicated time blocks for focused work.
So scheduling time in our day where we're completely unplugged and distraction-free.
Exactly. And during those time blocks, eliminate all potential distractions. So put your phone on airplane mode, close unnecessary tabs on your computer. Let those around you know you're not to be disturbed.
It's like creating like a sacred space for your brain to focus.
Yes. She also suggests using a timer
Okay.
to help you stay on track and avoid getting sucked into those distractions.
I love the timer idea. It's like having a little accountability buddy.
It is. Another strategy she recommends is practicing mindfulness meditation.
Because meditation helps train your attention and focus.
Exactly. It's like building mental muscle.
Okay.
The more you practice focusing your attention, the easier it becomes to resist those distractions and stay present.
Okay. I'm definitely adding meditation to my rewiring routine.
Mhm.
What about those times when distractions are unavoidable? Like, when you're at work and those emails just keep popping up.
Yeah. So Vignola emphasizes the importance of learning to gently redirect your thoughts back to the task at hand.
So it's like gently guiding your attention back to where it needs to be.
Precisely. And she suggests having like a mantra or a visual cue to help you refocus when those distractions arise. So it could be something as simple as like a sticky note on your computer that says focus or a picture that reminds you of your goal.
Oh, I love those visual cues. They're like little mental nudges to stay on track.
They are. Vignola also suggests using cold exposure or exercise as a way to boost dopamine naturally, which can help counteract those cravings for instant gratification.
Oh, interesting. So taking a cold shower or going for a run can help me resist those tempting distractions.
Exactly. Those activities release dopamine in a way that's like healthy and sustainable, unlike those quick bursts you get from scrolling through social media.
Okay, I'm definitely trying that. I'm all
Yeah.
about finding natural ways to boost my focus and energy.
Me too. And remember, it's not about being perfect, right? Yeah. It's about progress, not perfection.
That's such a helpful reminder. Vignola even talks about the arrival fallacy.
Yes.
Our brains sometimes get so fixated on the end goal that we forget to enjoy the journey.
She does. She emphasizes that true happiness comes from the process of growth and learning, not from reaching some like arbitrary destination.
It's like the saying, the journey is the destination.
Exactly. So Vignola encourages us to savor those small wins along the way, to appreciate the progress we're making, and to find joy in the process of becoming the best versions of ourselves.
I love that. So we're being mindful of distractions, celebrating our accomplishments, and focusing on the journey rather than just the destination.
Yeah.
Any other final nuggets of wisdom from Rewire before we wrap up this section?
Yes. She ends the book with a really powerful message about the importance of forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness, both for ourselves
Right.
and for those who have hurt us.
Interesting.
And she argues that holding on to anger and resentment, it keeps us stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And prevents us from fully embracing the present.
Yeah.
And moving forward.
It's like carrying around all that emotional baggage, weighing us down and preventing us from truly soaring.
Exactly. So forgiveness is about releasing those negative emotions and creating space for healing and growth. And it's not about condoning or excusing hurtful behavior.
So it's like a gift we give to ourselves.
Exactly. It's not always easy, but Vignola believes it's essential
Yeah.
for breaking free from the negative programming of the past and creating a brighter, more fulfilling future.
That's so beautiful. It's like by forgiving, we're choosing to rewrite our own stories.
Yeah.
Like letting go of the pain and embracing the possibility of a new beginning.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it really speaks to the transformative power of rewiring our brains. We have the power to choose how we respond to our experiences, even the painful ones. We can either stay stuck in the past or we can choose to forgive, learn and grow, creating a future filled with love and joy and possibility.
That's incredibly inspiring. We've covered a lot of ground today exploring the science of neuroplasticity and unpacking Vignola's neuro toolkit for creating lasting change. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from our discussion so far?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many valuable insights in this book, but I think for me, it's the reminder that we're not fixed, right? We are constantly evolving, adapting, and with a deeper understanding of how our brains work, we can actively participate in that process of change and create more fulfilling, joyful lives.
I love that. For me, it's the emphasis on self-compassion. Change is hard, and we're not always going to get it right,
Yeah.
but by being kind to ourselves, honoring our commitments, and celebrating our accomplishments, we can create a more supportive and empowering environment for growth and transformation.
Beautifully said. And this journey of rewiring our brains, it's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a destination. It's a lifelong adventure of learning and growing and becoming the best versions of ourselves.
And before we wrap up this trending tidbits deep dive into Rewire, let's leave our listeners with a little something to ponder. Vignola compares our brains to muscles that need to be trained, conditioned. What's one small step you can take today to start flexing those mental muscles and rewiring your brain for the better? It could be anything from setting a timer for focused work to practicing a few minutes of mindfulness meditation or simply committing to getting an extra hour of sleep tonight.
That's a great question. I'm excited to hear what our listeners come up with.
Welcome back to Trending Tidbits. We've been on quite the journey exploring, the power of neuroplasticity with Nicole Vignola's Rewire, right? All the amazing ways we can rewire our brains for a better life.
Absolutely. I mean, we've covered so much ground, right? From visualization and non-negotiables to managing distractions, embracing self-compassion.
It's been quite a ride. But before we wrap up this brain-boosting journey, I'd love to hear what resonated most with you from Rewire.
Yeah. What are some of the key insights you'll be taking away from this Trending Tidbits deep dive? What's one strategy you're excited to try in your own life?
Yeah, we're all about putting this knowledge into action.
Right.
But, before we get to those action steps, I want to revisit a few more of the powerful concepts that Vignola highlights in Rewire.
Okay, yeah.
What else really stuck out to you?
Well, one that really stood out to me was this idea of Unbecoming?
Unbecoming.
Yeah. It's not just about forming new habits, it's about actively dismantling those negative thought patterns and behaviors that are no longer serving us.
Like decluttering our mental closets,
Got
right?
it?
And getting rid of all the outdated beliefs and habits that are weighing us down.
Exactly. And Vignola reminds us that this process of unbecoming, it takes conscious effort and repetition. Remember, neurons that fire together wire together.
Right, right.
We need to consistently interrupt those negative patterns and replace them with those positive ones.
And, she gives us so many practical tools for doing just that, from visualization and mindfulness to setting those realistic goals, honoring our commitment.
Totally. And let's not forget the power of forgiveness.
Yes, forgive.
Right. Sometimes those negative patterns are rooted in past hurts and resentments. And forgiveness can be the key to unlocking that sense of freedom and healing.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Mhm.
Speaking of healing, Vignola also dives into the importance of sleep for rewiring our brains.
Oh, yeah. Sleep is like absolutely crucial.
Oh, yeah, it's so important.
It allows our brains to consolidate memories, regulate emotions, and basically hit that reset button, right? Vignola points out that sleep deprivation can actually impair neuroplasticity.
Really?
Yeah, making it harder to break free from those ingrained negative patterns.
Oh, wow. It's like trying to, rebuild a house without giving the foundation time to set.
Yeah.
We need that restorative sleep to fuel our rewiring journey.
Absolutely. And she offers those practical tips for improving sleep quality, like establishing a regular sleep routine, creating a relaxing bedtime ritual, and limiting screen time before bed.
All great reminders. As we wrap up this Trending Tidbits deep dive into Nicole Vignola's Rewire, I want to leave you with one of the most empowering messages from the book. We have the power to change our destinies by rewiring our brains.
That's so true. It's a really powerful reminder that we are not defined by our past experiences or circumstances. We have the ability to choose how we respond, how we think, and ultimately, how we shape our lives.
And Vignola's final message is a call to action. Equipped with the knowledge of neuroplasticity, go forth.
Love it. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. Go forth and put this knowledge into practice. Even small changes, they can have that ripple effect, leading to remarkable transformations over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's one small step you'll take today to start flexing those mental muscles? It could be as simple as, like, setting a timer for focused work, practicing mindfulness for a few minutes, or simply, committing to getting an extra hour of sleep tonight. Remember, every step counts.
It really does. And remember, progress, not perfection, is the key. Be kind to yourself. Celebrate your wins. And keep rewiring your brain for a more joyful and fulfilling life.
That's it for this episode of Trending Tidbits. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to start rewiring your brain for the better.
Yeah. Until next time, happy rewiring.
Happy rewiring.